A weather forecast is usually something we glance at without a second thought. We check the temperature, see if rain is expected, and decide whether to grab a jacket or an umbrella before heading out. But every so often, the forecast changes in a way that's impossible to ignore. The language becomes more urgent. Meteorologists stop talking about scattered showers and start using words like historic, life-threatening, or catastrophic. Emergency alerts light up our phones. Grocery stores become crowded. Gas stations grow busier. Highways begin to fill with traffic as people rush to leave before conditions worsen. In those moments, the forecast is no longer just a weather update. It becomes a survival warning. So what causes that shift? When does an ordinary forecast become something that demands immediate action? And more importantly, what can ordinary people do before time begins to run out? Let's take a closer look at why modern weather forecasts deserve far more attention than many of us give them. Weather forecasting has never been more advanced than it is today. Satellites orbit the Earth around the clock. Radar systems monitor developing storms in real time. Weather balloons collect atmospheric data, while powerful computer models process enormous amounts of information to predict dangerous conditions days before they arrive. These technologies have dramatically improved our ability to see severe weather coming. Yet despite these advances, one challenge remains remarkably consistent: human nature. After hearing countless warnings that never directly affected them, many people begin to assume the next alert will also pass without consequence. Familiarity breeds confidence, and confidence can quietly turn into complacency. That mindset can become dangerous when a forecast suddenly changes. In this documentary, we'll explore how forecasts evolve into survival warnings, why extreme weather places increasing pressure on modern communities, and the practical steps that can make a meaningful difference when every minute counts. When the language changes, meteorologists choose their words with great care. Most daily forecasts focus on expected conditions: temperatures, cloud cover, rainfall, or sunshine. Their purpose is to help people plan an ordinary day. A survival warning sounds very different. Instead of describing the weather itself, forecasters begin emphasizing its consequences. They warn of dangerous flooding, destructive winds, widespread power outages, rapidly spreading wildfires, or conditions that could threaten lives. That change in language signals something important. The forecast is no longer just about what the sky is doing. It has become a message about human safety. Imagine hearing that an approaching storm could produce winds exceeding 100 kilometers per hour, strong enough to tear shingles from roofs, bring down trees, and leave entire neighborhoods without electricity for days. At that point, the question is no longer whether you'll need an umbrella. It's whether your family has enough drinking water, shelf-stable food, flashlights, batteries, and a plan if the power disappears. Without anyone announcing it directly, the forecast has crossed an invisible line, and once that line is crossed, every hour of preparation becomes increasingly valuable. Why modern forecasts matter more than ever. That growing need for preparation isn't only about the weather itself. It's also about the world we've built around it. Severe weather has always existed, but modern society has created new vulnerabilities. Cities continue expanding into flood-prone areas. More people depend on electrical grids, mobile networks, internet connections, transportation systems, and supply chains that can all be disrupted by a single powerful storm. Because of that dependence, even a weather event lasting only a few hours can create problems that continue for days. A powerful thunderstorm may damage power lines. Without electricity, refrigerators stop working. Fuel pumps may shut down. Internet and mobile services can become unreliable or fail altogether. Traffic signals stop functioning, turning familiar roads into hazardous intersections. Long after the rain has ended and the winds have eased, communities may still be dealing with the storm's aftermath. That's why emergency managers consistently encourage people to prepare before a forecast reaches its most serious stage. The earlier those preparations begin, the more options people have, and the less likely they are to find themselves competing for limited supplies or making difficult decisions under pressure. The first signs. people often ignore by the time severe weather dominates the headlines. The warning process has usually been unfolding for days. Survival situations rarely begin with dramatic scenes. More often, they develop through a series of small changes that are easy to dismiss on their own. The forecast grows a little more serious with each update. Local authorities begin issuing advisories, schools start discussing possible closures, emergency. Officials recommend delaying non-essential travel. Stores quietly sell more bottled water, batteries, canned food, and other emergency supplies. Individually, none of these signs may seem alarming. Together, however, they tell a very different story. They suggest that the risk is increasing and that the window for easy preparation is beginning to close. Unfortunately, many people wait for one final confirmation before taking action. They assume there's still plenty of time. By the time that final warning arrives, grocery shelves may already be empty. Roads become congested with traffic. Fuel stations grow crowded, and emergency services receive a surge of calls from people who suddenly realize they're unprepared. Preparation is always easiest before everyone else reaches the same conclusion. The greatest advantage isn't having more supplies than anyone else, it's having enough time to prepare without rushing. That is often the difference between responding calmly and reacting under pressure. What a survival warning really means. When people hear the phrase survival warning, many immediately picture hurricanes making landfall or massive tornadoes crossing open landscapes. But reality is far broader than that. Many different types of weather can threaten lives. Even if they don't make international headlines, extreme heat can become deadly, particularly for older adults, young children, and people without reliable cooling. Heavy rainfall can trigger flash floods within minutes, trapping drivers on roads that seemed perfectly safe only moments earlier. Winter storms may isolate entire communities for days, while freezing temperatures create dangerous conditions both inside and outside the home. Wildfires can spread with astonishing speed when strong winds combine with dry vegetation, leaving little time for evacuation. Although these events look very different, they share one important characteristic. They can overwhelm normal routines far faster than most people expect. Simple errands become impossible. Power failures interrupt daily. Roads become unsafe. Essential services face increasing pressure. This is why emergency officials sometimes ask people to stay home, evacuate early, or avoid unnecessary travel. Those recommendations are not based on guesswork or worst-case imagination. They are based on detailed forecasts, historical experience, and careful analysis of how conditions are expected to develop. Ignoring those warnings doesn't simply increase inconvenience. It can dramatically increase the likelihood of becoming stranded, injured, or needing emergency rescue when responders are already stretched to their limits. A survival warning is ultimately a reminder that ordinary routines may no longer provide enough protection. Simple. Preparation makes a big difference. The encouraging news is that preparing for severe weather doesn't require expensive equipment or an underground bunker. In most cases, the most effective preparations are also the simplest. Emergency experts consistently recommend starting with practical essentials. Store enough drinking water to last several days. Keep shelf-stable food that doesn't rely on refrigeration. Have flashlights ready, along with extra batteries, rather than depending only on the flashlight on your phone. Charge power banks and essential electronic devices before storms arrive. Know exactly where important documents are stored so they can be accessed quickly if necessary. Make sure prescription medications are refilled before pharmacies close or travel becomes difficult. These steps may seem ordinary, but during an emergency they can make everyday life far more manageable. Preparation also needs to reflect where you live. A family living near rivers faces different risks than one living in wildfire-prone regions or areas that regularly experience severe winter storms. No single emergency plan fits every location. The strongest plans are tailored to local hazards, local weather patterns, and the specific needs of the people who will rely on them. In the end, Preparedness isn't about expecting the worst. It's about reducing uncertainty before difficult conditions arrive, so that if a forecast becomes a survival warning, you're already one step ahead instead of struggling to catch up. By the time the first heavy rain begins to fall or powerful winds start to build, many of the most important choices should already have been made. This is where preparedness proves its value. Should you leave before evacuation routes become congested? Should you cancel a trip that could place you directly in the storm's path? Should you secure outdoor furniture before strong winds can turn it into dangerous debris? Should every phone, power bank, and essential device be fully charged? Should your vehicle be fueled before long lines form at gas stations? These may seem like simple decisions, but they become far more difficult once severe weather arrives and time begins to run short. Stress narrows our focus. Under pressure, even routine choices can feel overwhelming. That's why emergency planning is really about making important decisions while conditions are still calm. A simple checklist created in advance removes uncertainty. Instead of trying to remember everything at the last minute, families can work through clear, familiar steps with confidence. Preparation doesn't eliminate risk, but it does reduce confusion, save valuable time, and replace panic with purposeful action. And when every minute matters, that can make all the difference. The human side of survival, every major weather disaster leaves behind two stories. One is about destruction, the other is about people. Again and again, we see neighbors checking on elderly residents. Volunteers distribute food and water to families in need. Emergency crews work around the clock despite exhaustion. Communities open shelters, share generators, and offer support to complete strangers. These moments remind us that survival is rarely an individual effort. Preparedness certainly begins at home, but recovery often depends on the strength of the community around us. One conversation with a neighbor before storm. One phone call to a vulnerable family member. One offer to help. Someone who cannot prepare on their own. Small actions like these can have a lasting impact when conditions become difficult. A strong emergency plan isn't only about supplies and equipment. It also includes knowing who might need your help and who you could turn to if you ever needed theirs. True resilience grows through preparation, communication, and cooperation. When communities plan together, they recover faster, adapt more effectively, and emerge stronger after the storm has passed. A forecast becomes a survival warning when the weather threatens more than our comfort. It begins to threaten daily life, critical infrastructure, and, in some cases, human lives. The encouraging news is that modern forecasting gives us something previous. Generations often didn't have time to prepare, time for families to make informed decisions, time for communities to organize resources, and time for emergency services to position personnel and equipment before conditions become dangerous. The forecast itself is not the danger. It is an opportunity to act before the worst conditions arrive, while choices are still available and preparation is still possible. The next time you hear meteorologists using unusually urgent language, take a moment to listen carefully. They are not trying to create fear. They are providing one of the most valuable resources anyone can receive during an emergency: advance, warning, and how you choose to use that warning may ultimately shape what happens next. If you found this documentary helpful, consider subscribing for more evidence-based survival and preparedness content. Because when knowledge comes before the emergency, preparation becomes your greatest advantage.